For those of you who don't know, there's been an extreme, they're calling it a mega drought in the Southwest.
A mega drought is choking the western and southwestern regions of the U.S. It's the worst drought in over 1,000 years in this country. Just 30 miles east of Las Vegas sits Lake Mead on the border of Arizona and Nevada. It's the largest man-made reservoir in North America. Lake Mead pumps water from the Colorado River to nearly 25 million people.
About 75% of the water goes to irrigation for agriculture that supplies about 60% of the food for the nation that's grown in the United States.
Now it's only 30% full, an historic low. Over the years, rusted debris and sunken boats have emerged. This is what it looked like in 1983. Fast forward nearly 4 decades, Lake Mead is now 178 feet lower and continuing to shrink.
People ask me, what do we need to do to fill up Lake Mead again? I need over a decade of above average snowfall in the Colorado Rockies to make that happen.
Now, areas like Phoenix and Las Vegas get most of their water from the Colorado River. Particularly, we're talking about behind the Hoover Dam, which serves about almost 10% of the U.S. population's fresh water supply. 10% of the nation's water supply comes from the Hoover. That's crazy, right? That's because all those people living in California and even Mexico. Some people in Mexico are served by the Hoover Dam.
Yeah, they're not loving it because all the water is sucked out of the Colorado River and everybody downstream. Too bad.
Nothing, yeah.
Sucks to be you. Hey, you should have bought real estate down the line.
Yeah, it does suck. It sucks because if you look at it in Mexico, like there's like no water there. Like the water, like there's like we got lake bed, but you got no water. Now they're attributing it to climate change. Essentially, what's going on is that there's a cycle. It's a complicated problem, but it's simple to understand. There's a cycle that happens. There's first in the winter it snows, snow caps on the mountains. In the summertime, that snow melts, feeding the Colorado River, putting the water into Lake Mead. Then you get the power generation, then you get the fresh water. So that's the cycle that they depend on. So because weather patterns have changed, now there's less snow cover on the Rocky Mountains. So that means there's less water for the lake. But the problem is that the snow cover has been at record low snowfall for like the past 10 years. So every year, instead of getting X amount of water, you're only getting like a 10 or 5% of what you usually get. So essentially what's going on is that things that were 500 feet or 1,000 feet underwater are now exposed because the water levels have dropped so dramatically. So initially they started finding things like keys, trinkets, and actually there was a town that was covered by the lake.
It's a town once underwater. The recent discoveries at Lake Mead now bringing attention to St. Thomas.
Yeah, it was a Mormon settlement flooded out on purpose decades ago when Lake Mead was filled up, and now we know the lake's on the way down. News 3's Ophelia Young shows us the town that's been underwater for 60 years.
When they first flooded the area, so they this town was
they abandoned the town and they filled it. It was a valley.
Yeah,
essentially.
But then they started finding other things like sunken boats. And now they've gotten to a point where the water's receded so far that they've come to what's being known as the mob graveyard. So there are multiple bodies that have been found at this spot. Now you'll hear in the news report how they know that whoever dumped these bodies there had to have a boat. And these bodies have been there from the 80s. So now the bodies that are in this mob graveyard are popping up all over the place.
55-gallon drums that are partially open. It's like, oh God, they've got the surprise. This is great. It's like a time capsule with corpses.
Yeah.
Police say a body found on the shores of Lake Mead had been underwater since the 1980s. The skeletal remains were found in a barrel this weekend by boaters. We spoke to one of them who says the disturbing discovery ruined the lake for him.
Yeah,
my fiance's little cousins, they're about 10, 12 years old. It's just something you don't really want them seeing,
And police believe the dropping lake water levels could reveal even more bodies in the future. Fox 5's Drew Andre spoke with Metro's homicide unit about investigating this grim discovery. He joins us live from Metro headquarters. Drew?
It's funny because you know you're in trouble when they say, hey, we expect to find more bodies.
Well, what about being the ones who put them there saying, son of a bitch, why did you suck? Look, what, you're that lazy? You couldn't drive out further in the lake? What the hell's wrong with you?
You're the guy. How would we know, boss? How would we know?
Well,
The guy was 500 feet.
You could have an entire storyline there, because you could have like the person or persons who put the first bodies in the barrels in the lake in other barrels that are joining them later down the road because they're not known for their great equity.
This is crazy.
Jimmy Hoffa, where's Jimmy?
They're probably gonna find him down there in one of those barrels. This is the body of Jimmy Hoffa. He could be down there in one of those barrels.
Mm-hmm.
But man, damn, but I think the scary is that all these bodies that nobody's claiming. Like what happened?
Well, and John, this morning the autopsy revealed that this was a homicide. Now the next steps, this will go to a DNA lab to try to see what they can extract to start putting the pieces of this puzzle together.
Autopsy determined that it was a homicide. You mean he didn't jump into a barrel and seal it on himself and jump into the lake? Thank God for science.
And no, he had to get a boat to go out to the middle of the lake.
No, okay, so how do you work this out? Okay, we're going to ride the boat out to the middle of the lake. And go, okay, well, Jesus, this thing's tipping. I can't get in the barrel.
I think it's a foregone conclusion it was a homicide.
It's a lucky guess.
It's uncharted waters for Metro's homicide division.
None of us have actually encountered this before, where we're going to have a deceased individual who's been underwater for, upwards of potentially 40 years.
And a discovery that never seemed possible.
Had the water level not receded so far, we never make the discovery of this victim.
40 years ago, where this barrel with human remains inside sits, was roughly 100 feet underwater and several hundred yards from shore.
Someone had to have a boat, and someone had to, put someone in the barrel and push them off the boat.
So that fact alone, we don't need somebody an autopsy to figure out if this was a homicide, right? He's like, this had to happen this way, right? This is the only way it could happen.
Well, Nate, this is, instead of a cold case, this is a wet and dry case?
From organized crime or something completely different. That's what Lieutenant Ray Spencer's team will dig into, if they can extract DNA from the remains.
I mean, if you notice, I'm saying if, because it will be a very challenging part of this investigation.
It will take months to see if they get a DNA match. Then they'll use genealogical data, likely using their partners at Othram Labs in Texas.
I got to point out, I think he's lying a little bit here. And I don't blame him, but it's going to be very hard to extract the DNA. They just said it was a skeleton, right?
I think so, yeah.
And it was submerged.
I believe so.
I believe, well, no expert, believe that most skeletons have bone marrow. Bone marrow is a very rich place to find DNA. They even do bone marrow transplants.
Okay.
You're telling me that you can't take this skeleton, you can't grind up a chunk of it, and you can't pull the DNA from it? I think that they're saying that because they don't want people running off. Give a false sense of security. Now, I could be wrong, but if I was running the investigation, I might say something like that too. Like, I don't know, it's going to be a long shot, Bill. It's going to be tough. Don't know if we're going to get it. And I'd also keep my mouth shut as the other bodies come in, and then discover everything all at one time so you could do an arrest, because you want a surprise.
I don't know. I think that's a lot of times with law enforcement, they're not playing 6-dimensional chess like that. It's just kind of like,
that's not 6, dude. That's like 0.2.
And a lot of times, just to be honest with you, it's kind of like, this is what they've maybe heard from someone, the lab, because DNA doesn't last forever, even in bones, right? So it's, like they can't get dinosaur DNA from bones, because eventually that DNA is lost. So I don't know what time frame. This is from 40 years ago. How long does DNA last, even in bone?
You had the lovely submarine that was named after me that everyone died on who's ever been in it. And that was in, I believe, the harbor in South Carolina. I believe they extracted DNA from those people from the Civil War.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, underwater in a barrel, there's some degree of potential preservation in that. I don't know.
No, you're probably. Hey, you could be right. I am no expert on this. Now we know where Brian Austin's gone.
We turn now to a murder mystery after the discovery of not one but two bodies found when the water level in Lake Mead dropped dramatically. And it immediately raised suspicions for anyone who knows anything about the mafia or just watched The Godfather.
Two sets of human remains were discovered in Lake Mead. They think it screams mob activity.
Right now, investigators trying to figure out whose remained paddleboaters found at Lake Mead. Police telling us there's no evidence of foul play here, but it begs the question, how many more bodies will be found now that the lake is at record low levels?
So they found two bodies. Two bodies as of that video. Maybe if somebody out there's a DNA expert knows about this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Let me know in the comment section what the hell we talking about here, right? Why we struggling with it? This is all you people out there. Let us know if we're right. And you know how they're going to spin this. This is going to be the climate change bodies or something. I don't know what they're going to say. But
well, it is climate change. I mean, once it was safe, and now it's no longer safe, and somebody shot them or put them in concrete.
And they got the exposure.
There's a change in their business climate. That's for sure.
Hey, but at the end of the day, let us know how you feel about this story. My name is Nate for Eric. We'll see you next time. Peace.
See ya.